It's interesting when you're watching TV and seeing so many chefs, because I seem to remember that when I first started on TV, I think I was the very first, professional chef to have his full BBC series. And today, I suppose, I have a little bit of pride on watching chefs on TV. And the reason for that, many of them have worked for me. So if you look at some of the big names at the moment, Tom Kerridge, he worked for me for 2 years when he was first coming up through his training. Really good young lad in the kitchen, and I just am proud of them. I'm really proud to see that's a man now, a 2 Michelin star chef. So he has not only proved himself in the industry and in the professional, with that professional status, but at the same time has enough personality in his, not only within himself, but within his food, and to tell that story on TV. Another one is Nathan Outlaw, who worked with me in London for a little while, another 2 Michelin star chef. Got his restaurant down in Cornwall. Again, another great talented, but one of my old boys. And that's how I like to look at them. And then you've got Gordon Ramsay, a great friend of mine now for, 25 years or more, who, he can be a bit ruthless on the TV every now and again, but as a person, not only is he a true gentleman, but on top of that, he's still a 3 Michelin star chef, and I think people forget that, and I think he's more than proved himself as one of the great British chefs of all time. And of course, good old Rick Stein, a man, again, that been watching that man for years and years and years, and I like the honesty in the story he tells. So yeah, it's good to watch. I don't watch too many, cookery programs, but if I've got one of my old lads on there, I like to watch it. And a couple of guys I've also mentioned there with Gordon and Rick, who I think are true greats in the industry. Do you know, there's lots of young chefs out there who want to become, superstars overnight. And I always want to say to them, look, it takes an awful long time to actually find and discover your own style of food. And my sort of discovery was working with some great chefs over the years, from my days working in Holland and then working for the likes of Brian Turner, Michelin star chef that I worked with as his right-hand man back in the 80s. And if I take the influence he had on my food, was really quite phenomenal, because what his food was about simplicity. It was making sure that nothing was ever overplayed with. It was about how to just draw the maximum flavors from each ingredient, how to then never over-influence the main feature. And that was one thing that he taught. There is a main feature to every single dish. Our job is actually to support that, to add other flavors to another dimension that's going to do nothing but complement, but never take away from that natural central flavor that you're featuring. And so looking at that, and other chefs I had the opportunity to work with, I worked in France with a 3 Michelin star chef for a small period and all this sort of thing. Taking all of their influence, taking all of their styles, helped me develop my own. Some things you sort of agree with and you think, yes, definitely this I want to, that's offered a new education to my palate and to my repertoire. At the same time, there are many other things that you feel, no, I'd rather ignore. But then that's how you look and learn. I think one of the saddest things in the industry at the moment, if I want to be ruthless and honest, is that young chefs now do want to become head chefs at the age of 22, 23, and there are many out there of that age who are head chefs of operations. What did I know at 22 and 23? And I think those chaps, I suddenly realised I knew very little. I thought I knew so much then, but then it's only now that you realise how little I'd experienced and how little I knew at that age. And so thank goodness I didn't try and run away with it at that point. I still wanted to learn and work with others. So I would say to everybody, don't rush your career away. It's not all about money and earning a bit more because you're a head chef. It's about, if you really want to become known, if you really want to become a man or a lady, for that matter, respected within this industry and known within this industry, who's somebody who's added something, who has an influence, that takes time. It takes a lifetime of looking and learning. You know, since I left my college, 40 years ago, I've got so much to look and to look, see and learn about. So I feel now it's about chefs are predominantly influenced not by the people they're learning from and working with. It's moreover from television programs and cookery books. Reading a story is one thing. Understanding that story and experiencing that story is something else. Over the years, many different chefs have influenced my style of food, but also working in other countries, particularly working overseas with my time, even my days back in Amsterdam. When I lived there, I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic, some of the food that I was learning, because that was back in the late 70s, early 80s, when there was all kinds of food fashions. Food was changing quite dramatically. The nouvelle cuisine and all this sort of thing that was going on. So that had quite an influence. I think likewise over here, learning about all of this sort of West Indian cookery with an influence I had from my stepfather, but then that has actually done nothing but grow and develop and recognize an awful lot more of it since, being involved with the Calabash here in Grenada. And likewise again, in the UAE, I'm learning so much about Middle Eastern cuisine, a food that I'd kind of ignored, if you like. But it's, now I'm learning so much every single year, and that's what I love about this industry. It is a continual education. Do you know what really inspired me and why I wanted to, have a restaurant in the West Indies and here in the beautiful Caribbean was we did one year for the BBC, when I was making all the TV series for the BBC, we did a Christmas special. And that Christmas special was here in Grenada. And it was trying to show people that, it's not always about roast turkey and Christmas pudding every single year. You can go to different parts of the world and enjoy different styles of food. So you can imagine, I was saying, yes, please, I'd love to go and, film that particular program. And it was great fun to do. But I just fell in love with this island. I absolutely fell in love with it. I did come back that following year, fell in love with the Calabash, fell even more in love with Grenada. And the great thing with getting to know Leo Garbett, who owns, with his family, who owns the Calabash, I just found him, quite an inspirational man. He is a man who also had the same beliefs, the same strengths that I feel I have in this industry. And it is this always wanting to do more, always wanting to offer more, always wanting to keep our guests, which are our business, happy. And I thought, this is a man I'd love to work with, and hence the beginning of the Rhodes restaurant at the Calabash. There was an influence from my stepfather, John, a man I love and adore, who's been my stepfather for over 40 years. And he is from Jamaica. So, I was also being taught at a very young age what West Indian food was really all about, and what it holds and what values it holds, and the story it tells. So that excited me as well. So, obviously having that opportunity to come over here was really exciting. And then I suppose all of that has helped with my decision of going into the UAE. I found myself, opening a restaurant there. We opened then 2 restaurants. And then I found that business was just growing and growing. And now I'm involved with very many businesses out in the UAE, within cinema groups, within supermarket chains, within hotels. My business was just growing and growing, and I thought, that's it. I just spoke to my wife one day and I said, we can't stay in London anymore, because it was probably 8 to 10 trips per annum back and forth to the UAE, and this is getting out of hand, because previous to that I was only doing 2 or 3. So now we've turned it the other way around. We're now living in the UAE, and I literally only make 2 or 3 trips back to the UK. So yeah, it's worked nicely for us, and business is continuing to grow. So I like to feel, fingers crossed, that it was the right decision at that time. I think the new fashion started late last year, but I think 2019 is the big year for it, and that's probably vegan. because more and more people are wanting to become vegan, wanting to become as healthy as they possibly can, which, you know, there's not a bad thing at all. And I think that'll spread across the whole of the world. I really do feel that Middle Eastern food is going to become more and more fashionable. And I think you'll also probably see Middle Eastern TV cookery programs coming on very soon. You know, it's certainly one I'd love to do. Because again, that will be part of an education. And I'd like to think that classic dishes of old are going to find a sort of they're going to be refreshed with simplicity.